Hey, I'm Portia Sabin. Support for the future of what comes from True West, presenting the Psychedelic Furs and the Church on Wednesday, September 2nd. Doors at 7. All ages. One of the most influential bands of the last 30 years and one of my all-time favorites, the Psychedelic Furs are known for their hits Love My Way, Pretty in Pink, and Heaven. Learn more about the Psychedelic Furs and the Church show Wednesday, September 2nd by going to cascadetickets.com. I'm Portia Sabin, and this is the future of what? Every day, I get demos of songs in my email inbox, like this one, called Secret Stories. That's from a band called Red Cabin, and I really liked it. So what happens next? The internet was supposed to change the world by providing a level playing field for all musicians. Now anyone can get their music out there without having to be on a record label. However, there are still gatekeepers that a band must navigate at multiple places in their career. If they want to play a show at a venue, they must submit their music to a promoter and get approved in order to play. If they want to get a booking agent to help them with planning their tours, they have to submit music to an agent. And of course, if they want to get signed to a record label, the label has to hear their music and like it. For gatekeepers, the internet's main result has been that now we get hundreds of MP3s and streams, like the one I got from Red Cabin, instead of hundreds of CDs. On today's episode, we talk to gatekeepers about the songs that made them open their gates, what made them fall in love with a song and thus help the band get to the next level. It's all coming up on The Future of What? Welcome to our first Gatekeepers Roundtable. Today we have with us Ken Cheppaikode from Dirtnap Records and Green Noise, the record store. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Portia. Thanks for having me.
We also have Theo Craig, who is a freelance club promoter. Welcome to The Future of What?
Hey, thanks for having me, Portia.
And we have legendary A&R guy, Slim Moon.
Hello.
So let's start with you, Slim. Why don't you tell us about a song that you heard that really made you fall in love with the artist?
Well, I was asked to go on this tour that was a bunch of Northwest solo artists. And it was me and Sean Krogan and Tammy Watson from Kill Sybil. Sean was from Cracker Bash, and the lead singer of Hammerbox, Carrie Ockrey, and this guy, Elliott Smith from Heat Miser. And I knew everybody except for Elliott. And the first night of the tour was at the Crocodile in Seattle. And I didn't watch the first guy play his set because I was chilling with Seattle friends. And then Sean started his set, and I was like, oh, I got to go in and see Sean. Before Sean played any songs, he said, everybody who just didn't watch Elliott Smith, you really missed out on something. So the next night, because I figured, Sean knew what he was talking about. The next night I went, and we played at the bottom of the hill in San Francisco, and I made a point to listen to Elliott's set, and I was completely blown away. And then I went out to the tour van, and I put his CD in the CD player, and after my set, and then I just listened to his CD over and over and over again instead of watching the other people. The song that really stood out for me, his stuff was really great, but the song that really stood out was a song called Last Call. One of the neat things that stood out for me was that it had a tuning change in the middle of the song.
So we're going to hear that song right now. So this is Last Call by Elliott Smith.
Last call, he was sick of it all, asleep at home. Told you off and goodbye. Oh, you know, one day it'll come to haunt you that you didn't tell him quite the truth. You're a crisis, you're an icicle, you're a tongueless talker. You don't care what you say, you're a jaywalker, and you just walk away, and that's all you do. The clap of the fading out sound of your shoes made him wonder who he thought that he knew. Last call, he was sick of it all. The endless stream of reminders made him so sick of you, sick of you, sick of you, sick of your sound, sick of you coming around, trying to crawl under my skin when I already shed my best defense. It comes out all around that you won, and I think I'm all done. You can switch me off safely while I'm lying here waiting for sleep to overtake me. Yeah, you're still here, but just check to make sure all you aspire to do is endure. You can't ask for more, knowing you'll never get that which you asked for. So you cast your shadow everywhere like the man in the moon. And you start to drink, you just wanna continue. It'll all be yesteryear soon. Start to drink, you just wanna continue. It'll all be yesteryear soon. Church bells, and now I'm awake, and I guess it must be some kind of holiday. I can't seem to join in this celebration, but I'll go to the service, and I'll go to pray, and I'll sing the praises of my Maker's name like I was as good as she made me. And I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I wanted her to tell me that she would never wake me. I'm lying here waiting for sleep to overtake me.
Never heard a room as quiet as one that Elliott was playing in. Just everyone would be in this silence with rapt attention. It was amazing. You could hear whispers and coughs and Elliott breathing between songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that same tour, when we got to LA, we played two shows, one in a bar and one at Jabberjaw, which was a all ages space in a storefront. And the power went out in Jabberjaw, and nobody knew what to do, but Elliott just went out back into this tiny little courtyard that they never used and just played completely acoustic. And all these all ages super young punk kids just surrounded him, 2 feet away. and it was just pin drop silent. All you could hear was him playing. It was just a magical show.
I think one of the most amazing things about that song and about a lot of Elliott songs is that it's actually a waltz, which is not something that you think of when you think of alternative rock for the most part. You know, it's that tempo that is just, it's got like a drag to it that's really compelling.
Completely.
Totally.
Yeah.
He did like a good waltz.
Yeah, he did a good waltz.
I go to the same coffee shop as Sean Craig, and we talk about music often. We talk about art, and sometimes we talk about some of the big things from the past. We don't talk specifically about Elliott. They were close friends, and that's just, you know, something that I think maybe is a little bit hard for him to talk about. But he did talk about this same tour, this being a thing where all these different artists, front people from groups went out together on kind of this circuit tour, and the idea being that different people would headline different nights. And he said by the end of it, it was just clear Elliott was the headliner.
Did it strike you like that, Slim? Did you feel when you started watching him and hearing that album that it was just obvious that he had it, whatever it is?
Yeah, he had that thing. My favorite types of bands, my favorite musicians are people who can completely capture and control the room with just their own instrument and their own voice without a drummer or a machine or a band, but just their one instrument and their voice. And although we were all solo artists, he was the only one who really had that command to be able to a true solo artist who could really have everybody riveted with just his voice and his single instrument.
I know I felt that way when I saw Colin Malloy play at the upstairs of a crappy bar in Portland in 2001 or something. And he was just playing, it was just himself with an acoustic guitar. And we were at a rock and swap. Ken, were you there at that?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I
In
thought
fact,
you were.
That's right.
I think that's the last time I saw you, Slim. That was a long time ago.
That might be right, yeah.
And I watched one song and I came running downstairs and I said, Slim, you've got to go see this guy. And Slim said, I'm talking to somebody. And I was like, no, you got to stop talking and get upstairs and see this guy before he's done. But yeah, it's funny when you see somebody who has that talent. It's like glowing like a big neon sign, I think.
Yeah. Like Meryl Garbus from Tune Yards, you know, for example. Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a different situation for you, Slim, because it's not like you got that demo in the mail. It's not like you were being solicited to put that out.
That's right. Yeah, I was not.
So how did you approach Elliott about working with him?
Well, like happened quite often back in the early days of Kill Rock Stars, I actually thought my label was too small and I thought he was too awesome. So the first thing I did was try to help him get a deal with a different record label, but then that record label didn't show any interest. And in the course of me trying to help him out, we had become friends, and I guess he felt like he could trust me, and so then we ended up working together.
Wow. Did you have, and that's something I've heard you say, that in the beginning a lot of people didn't take Elliott seriously?
Oh, yeah. You know, at that time, it's kind of hard to remember historically, but at that time, all of the notable solo artists in the indie rock genre were not coming out under their own names. You know, they instead came out as Smog or Palace or Centrido. And so it was just considered incredibly uncool to have just an acoustic guitar and also just come out with the name of the artist be your first and last name. It was sort of seen as the kiss of death. It was kind of brave of Elliott to do that. And the result was that when we sent it out to the usual Kill Rock Stars press list, to the people who usually wrote about the, you know, loud, noisy indie rock and punk bands that we usually put out, they just generally ignored it. You know, they'd put on the first song, hear an acoustic guitar, see that the guy was named Elliott Smith, and they'd think James Taylor, and then they would not listen to the rest of it, and very few people reviewed that first record.
I know that is true because I lived through that exact same thing, because in the early 90s I lived in London and I used to go out to music every night, like 5 nights a week at least. And I remember one night there was a band called the Family Cat playing and I really wanted to see them. But the opener on that show was somebody named PJ Harvey. And I thought, I'm not going to go and see some singer-songwriter with a guitar. And
Yeah.
I mean, eternally
Yeah.
furious at myself. I cannot believe I didn't go to that show. It's just so dumb. So anybody else want to talk about that song or Elliott before we move on to the next one?
I like the song. I've never been that incredibly familiar with him, never saw him live or anything like that. Yeah, it sounded great.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite artists. I discovered him a little bit later after he'd put out a few albums and he was on tour with Quasi. I made a trip up from Seattle to Olympia because I had a friend who was working security that night, and he said that you record shows. I was a concert taper at the time, recording all kinds of things that were happening in my neck of the woods. And this person who was really an acquaintance over the internet said, hey, if you want to record this show, there's this excellent artist, Elliott Smith, coming in. I can get you an audience with him, and we can see if we can get approval for a recording of that. I'll hook you up. Just come on up to Bellingham. And I did, and I didn't get approval to record off the board, which is what I would have preferred because I had really bad mics. So out there in the world now is a recording of that show with my left nostril, which kind of whistles. I notice it now, and I try not to breathe through it when I'm near a microphone, but you can kind of hear it just whistling throughout the recording. It's terrible.
That's amazing.
But it was an amazing show.
Wow.
At the mention of Quasi, I'd love to tell a little story about Quasi. If you're talking about gatekeeping and about how first impressions can go one way or the other, Elliott was in a band called Heat Miser, and so I had started working with him, but Heat Miser was still playing shows, and I went to a Heat Miser show, and they had a new fill-in temporary bass player named San Coombs, and he handed me a tape, and he said, "This is my band Quasi. We'd love to be on Kill Rock Stars." But he had a mustache, like one of those caterpillar rocker dude mustaches. And I was like so appalled because I didn't realize it was ironic. I thought it was real. I mean, I thought it was like, and actually those kind of mustaches have actually become much more common since those days. And so his cassette just sat on my table until the record came out on Up, and I loved it. And it's one of my favorite records to ever come out from any Pacific Northwest band. And I just feel like such a dummy, just like you in the PJ Harvey story. I feel like such a dummy that I let a mustache keep me from checking out that record.
Have any of you guys ever had a situation like that where you didn't check something out because of some first impression?
Oh yeah, I can think of so many different examples. A lot of, it seems like a lot of the times what, gets me to listen to a demo, or, in this case, not listen to a demo, seems pretty arbitrary. Not liking the name, not liking the cover art, not liking the other bands who you see that they're playing on bills with, that sort of thing. Yeah, because of that, it can actually be kind of random and kind of arbitrary what actually gets listened to.
It might even just be how they approach you out in the real world. I feel like we've probably all experienced it, where you're having maybe an intimate conversation, or not so intimate conversation, but catching up with friends and have someone show up with laser focus, and they really want you to know that they're doing a thing that you need to hear. And it can just rub you the wrong way, and you can miss out on great things as a result.
Sometimes, though, you don't miss out, because I feel like since I've been running Kill Rock Stars, I've gotten several demos, which are things like 5 dudes in really tight leather pants, and all the songs are about, like, bitches and hoes and, women on their knees on the cover and stuff. And I'm like, are you guys familiar with this record label? Like, did you just send this to everybody in the world? When people don't do their research, it really bothers me. I feel like they deserve to go straight in the trash if they're not careful about what they...
Yeah, it's usually pretty obvious pretty quick too. I mean, in those cases, I kind of feel like you don't even really have to listen to the demo to really, see that the band isn't really, doing their homework and isn't really putting in the effort to make sure that they're, an appropriate fit. But it seems like those bands weed themselves out pretty quickly in my experience.
Guys, let's pause for a moment for a station break. I'm Portia Sabin, and this is The Future of What? Stay with us.
Can I have a taste of your ice cream? Can I lick the crumbs from your table? Can I interfere in your crisis? No, mind your own business. No, mind your own business. Can I interfere in your crisis?
We're back on The Future of What with Ken, Slim, and Theo in our Gatekeepers Roundtable. So, Ken, how long have you been running Dirtnap Records?
Going on 16 years at the end of the year.
Yikes.
Long time.
That's a long time. So tell us about this song that we're going to hear next. Tell us, sort of set us up. How did you get a hold of the song? Did the band contact you, or what?
Well, I first heard of the band when I read a review of their first self-released limited to 300 LP in Maximum Rock and Roll. This is probably like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7. I don't remember. Anyways, the review made it seem like it would be something right up my alley, so I got a hold of the band, via the internet, and asked to buy a few copies of the LP to sell at my store because I figured it would be something that would kind of fit in with our niche. And I think they sent me 5 copies. I sold them right away. Wrote back to the band, asked them to send me a dozen copies, sold those right away. And then when I went back to ask for more copies, they said they were running pretty low since they had only pressed 300 of them. So I just said, go ahead and just send me all of them that you have left. And, I'm sure I can sell them. Because for about 6 months there, when I started stocking the record, I was basically playing it for every single person in Portland who wandered into the shop. And more often than not, the people would wind up buying it.
Wow.
Sold a lot of copies that way. And in fact, quite a few bands that wind up on Dirtnap kind of start out that way.
Wow. So you did some research.
Yeah, I did.
To find
I
them.
did my own version of market research.
Wow. So
But
tell us the name of the band and the song that we're going to hear.
The name of the band is the White Wires from Ottawa, and the song is called Up Late.
Awesome. Well, you and I can share a love of punk pop, so I of course think that's awesome. Love it.
Me too. And one thing I wanted to kind of say about that song as well is that it was wound up being a pretty fruitful association with that band, just in that at that time Ottawa was having a really an explosion of just really burgeoning young indie garage punk, whatever you want to call it. Scene seemed to be really springing up around there. And we kind of were able to, insinuate ourselves with that, and that after, becoming friends with and signing up the White Wires to our label, we signed up a couple more bands from that immediate scene. And we ran across a guy who does all the mastering for most of those bands, who now does a lot of the mastering for all the Dirtnap bands. And we got turned on to a really great festival called Ottawa Explosion that's put on by people in that crowd of folks, or that crowd of bands. And, we go up to that every year, and I've actually signed up bands from seeing them at the Ottawa Fest. So yeah, it's kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of come full circle. They had told me before that they were influenced by previous generations of like Dirtnap Records bands. And now that's kind of come around, and they've influenced us as well, as in that it's kind of changed the course of the label a little bit and sort of given us, like, kind of changed the geographic focus a little. I always say that for some weird reason we sign up a lot of bands from Texas and a lot of bands from Canada. I'm not sure why. Hardly any bands from Portland.
That is funny, because I remember there was a band called the Exploding Hearts on your label. Were they from California?
Oh no, they were a Portland band.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
they were a
yeah.
Portland band. That band was amazing. That was one of my all-time favorite.
Yeah, I always say that the Exploding Hearts kind of like closed a door on one era of the label and opened the door on another. Because back when we were, in the first few years of the label, we were mostly doing Pacific Northwest bands, Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, BC. Whereas it seemed like the Exploding Hearts were kind of the last in the like long line of local bands we signed. And then shortly after all that stuff happened, that's kind of when we started signing up Texas bands. And we kind of, sort of abandoned the kind of geographical focus that the label used to have. And, instead of me considering it a regional thing, I started thinking of it as, kind of a national thing or an international thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I'm thinking about pop punk on a national scale. I feel like it's such a popular genre, but it almost got a little bit co-opted after Green Day, because I feel like there was like 12 seconds after Green Day where it looked like there could be, major label on the radio pop punk bands, and then instead it just all went to that like Warped Tour style.
Or like Stacy's Mama's Got It Going On.
Right.
I actually like that song.
It's a good song.
My wife loves that.
Yeah, it's a good song.
record, yeah.
I mean, those bands are not bad bands. They're good bands. It's just I feel like it's a little different. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, do you disagree?
Well, no, not at all. First of all, though, I don't really consider Dirtnap a pop punk label. I don't think we're really that much of a genre label.
Mm-hmm.
Our releases tend to have a kind of a unifying aesthetic, but I'm not really sure what to call it. I wouldn't necessarily call it pop punk or like garage rock or power pop, or whatever, although we've been tagged with all three of those and other genres. I kind of think of it as, it's sort of hard to articulate exactly what the aesthetic is, but I know it when I hear it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool. Just in the last, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, I'm actually starting to see a lot of reviews of bands who aren't on our label, in the press, who call, getting referred to as like Dirtnap style punk, which is pretty gratifying.
Yeah, that's very gratifying. I feel like our label, I mean, that's the thing about labels, is they're always a little bit guided by the taste of the owner. I mean, obviously, because we're the ones who choose the band. But it is funny because I think our label used to have a real identity when Slim was running it in the beginning. It was a Riot Girl label. It was this very specific thing. And it's evolved over the years to encompass so much more than that it's kind of hard to talk about. They're like, if people ask, what kind of bands are on your label? You're like, oh, I don't know. Like, an Americana band and a folk band and a metal band.
And the one thing you don't want to say is all kinds, because that's the answer. When you ask somebody, what kind of music do you listen to? If they say, I like all kinds of music, what that means is they're not really a music fan.
They don't like music. Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yep. That is true. I would prefer if someone would just say, listen, I listen to country. I'd prefer that. I'd be like, good. I know who you are. That's awesome. But if you say, I listen to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though like I just got done saying that I don't like, assigning, genres to the kind of bands that we sign or the kind of label that I think Dirtnap is. I mean, it does say right on our label punk rock. So when people or right on our logo. So, when people ask what kind of music we put out, I usually just say punk, even though I think that, in 2015, that's a pretty broad, inclusive, umbrella term for all kinds of, underground DIY rock and roll.
Well, I would agree, but I think, can we drill down as a round table here and try to actually talk about what punk is? Because for me, when I listen to music like White Wires that we just listened to, that is a very different thing from listening to a band that, for example, has 5 guys in it who all went to Berklee School of Music and trained as jazz guys. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's very different from that. And so I feel like punk has like a, I don't want to say simplicity in terms of, you know, like they can't play hard stuff. That's not the point. It's more like it has a, well, simplicity in a good way, you know, like a very straightforward character.
Oh no, I totally agree. I'm all about the simplicity. Simplicity is really one of the things I look for in like good rock and roll bands. And also in the case of something like the White Wires, you know, I don't know if they would necessarily fall under, you know, a very narrow definition of punk, but you know, I kind of think of them more as just, they're kind of along the continuum of rock and roll. You know, I think listening to especially that first record there, it's kind of actually, I think, takes elements from sort of all eras of rock, from like 50s rock and roll to like 60s garage to 70s punk to a little bit of 80s new wave to some kind of, you know, 90s, you know, budget rock thing, and ties it into some, you know, kind of ties it all together into something that, you know, to me sounds really timeless and sounds like it could have come out of almost any era, but also still seems modern in a way too.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments?
I can get so particular. You know, usually I say the music that I listen to and the music I put out when I was putting out music, it was punk. But, you know, if you hearken back to the early days of punk, to the late 70s, I sort of feel like the White Wires are probably more influenced by the Jam than the Sex Pistols. You know?
Oh yeah, undoubtedly.
Right. And that's an important distinction. I mean, for people who care.
Right, exactly. It's like you can get really into the weeds with it. Yeah.
And, you know, in turn, the Jam were probably more influenced, I think, than a lot of the 70s punk bands by they were kind of more explicitly influenced by stuff that came before them, you know, especially, you know, obviously 60s stuff.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I think about, I just was having this thought at 4:45 in the morning that the only rock record that my parents had in the house when I was growing up was Sgt. Pepper's. And I think that makes like my musical taste completely clear. Like now everything makes sense, you know, because I've always been a Beatles, like more Beatles than Stones, always. But I prefer like Robin Hitchcock. You know, it's like if you play wacky guitar and you have crazy lyrics, like I'm all over that. It's just a funny connection.
I think that what we listened to as kids, I mean, I guess we're really getting in the weeds, and also, but it might not be true in every case, but like my favorite records were Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles' White Album. And I feel like, you know, between Elliott Smith and Bikini Kill, those were the records that informed what I liked and what I put out on Kill Rock Stars. You know?
Absolutely. All right, Theo, it's your turn. So what did you bring for us to listen to and why?
I brought a song from a single that came out a few years ago by a band called La Luz. The song is Call Me in the Day, and it's a track that I brought in because in my role as a gatekeeper, well, a lot of it was letting only the good things in. Some of it was reaching out to other people whose opinion I respected, who were involved in music in other communities. One of those being Seattle. I have a friend, Bobby McHugh, up there. He's a film producer, and he made a video for this band. He reached out to me and said, hey, you should really check these people out. These women are amazing. Perhaps you can get them a show in Portland. And I hear that kind of thing all the time, but from someone like Bobby, I really paid attention. And this track just was a home run, and I got them down here as soon as I could. Since then, they've done pretty well. They have a couple of records out on Suicide Squeeze. This one is out on Water Wings Records, which I think is a subsidiary of Mississippi. It's a really moving, slow, dark, sexy surf song.
Cool.
From Seattle.
Let's hear it. Wow, that song is really great.
Yeah, it was gorgeous, and the band is incredible. I've been able to watch them come up from just a couple of years ago, being an incredible band, to being just incredible performers. They have the stage show set. They take elements of 60s kind of R&B performance and play it out. They crowd surf. They get the audience to dance, and they're just incredible. They're just incredible. And in the series that I was working at the time, it was a free, low-budget series. I didn't have a whole lot of money to bring artists from other cities out. So what I had to do was keep an eye on people who were coming up and grab them while I could, when I could talk them into a little bit more than gas money to come down and play for a packed room.
Right.
I really love that band. Their new record's really great. I've been listening to it all the time since it came out a couple weeks ago.
Weirdo Shrine. Yeah, it's produced by Ty Segall. I just picked it up, and I haven't even spun it yet. I've been
You should.
I've been meaning to set it down, but I do have it on Spotify too.
La Luz is actually another one of those bands. When I play them in the shop, when there's people in the store, like somebody invariably is like, "Oh, what is this?" and then winds up buying it. So we actually sell a fair amount of those records.
I thought that song was great. I noticed listening to it, I'd never heard it before. I noticed listening to it, there's a couple times that I felt like there were like drum mistakes that they left in. Like, and to me, that's super punk. When you just have an inspired performance and you just leave it how it is, you don't doctor it with digital, fixes later or play it 100 times to try to get it perfect. I really like that.
I really noticed the different instruments doing their own thing. Each instrument is doing its own thing completely, and yet they are working together so well. And then the vocals, the beautiful harmonies, like it's a very masterful soup. They've really put together something that sort of even sounds like maybe disparate parts, but that come together in a really amazing new way. I feel like that is the hallmark of a good band. I mean, I think all of us as gatekeepers, what we really are looking for is someone to just wow us, is just something that sounds like, holy kermoly, that was incredible. Right? Like that was the same, because music is pretty much, it's the same notes, it's the same instruments largely, but when you can put it together in a new way, it makes all the difference.
Oh, I know. And that song is such a display of their mastery in writing and performing, and in allowing those mistakes to bleed through in ways that make it sonically interesting and different than a lot of what you're going to hear from someone who really wants to get it just right. Sometimes just a little bit off is just what you need.
Well, and also, especially because it hints at what a good live band they probably are. Because when you hear somebody, I remember the most disappointing show I ever saw in my entire life was Radiohead at Radio City Music Hall. And I paid like $100 for those tickets, and I was so excited. It was the OK Computer tour.
Yeah.
And they got on stage, and they literally played the entire album note for note. And I wanted to cry, because I was like, I could have stayed home. There was no life to it. There was no excitement. They just were like, it was like listening to a record. It was so annoying. So, yeah. We're going to pause the conversation for a moment for a quick station break. This is The Future of What? Stay with us.
Can I have a taste of your ice cream? Can I lick the crumbs from your table? Can I interfere in your crisis? No, mind your own business. No, mind your own business. Can I interfere in your crisis? No, can I lick the crumbs from your
We're back on The Future of What? I'm Portia Sabin. We're talking gatekeepers. And guys, I want to talk about a song I love. This is Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down and their song, Bag of Hammers.
I am all in a ball in your front yard. I have this bag of hammers, and I won't ask to come in, 'cause I have sold everything. Still I have got some manners. And there's a hole in your head, spilled your thoughts on the floor. We wanted you bad, you wanted it more. The trick is, you do not get on that interstate by stay and see what becomes of us. Shake, 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 shake the frame of this house. Distress the word, make it shout. Ha, 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 ha. And as sharp as I sting, as sharp as I sing, it still soothes you, doesn't it? Like a lick of ice cream. I am all in a ball in your front yard. I have this bag of hammers, and I won't ask to come in, 'cause I have sold everything. Still I have got some manners. Shake, shake, shake the frame of this house. Distress the wood, make it shout. Ha, 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 ha. And as sharp as I sting, as sharp as I sing, it still soothes you, doesn't it? Like a lick of ice cream. Shake, 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 shake the frame of this house. Distress the wood, make it shout. Ha, 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 ha. And as sharp as I sting, as sharp as I sing, it still soothes you, doesn't it? Like a lick of ice cream. Shake the frame of this house. Distress the wood, make it shout. Ha, 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 ha.
So that was Bag of Hammers by Thao with the Get Down, Stay Down. And Slim, I'm going to let you talk about this song. I'm going to let you intro it and lead up to how I came to be listening to this song in the first place.
Well, I was still kept running Kill Rock Stars back then, but I was also being a manager for artists, and I was manager for a Seattle artist named Laura Veers. And so I was fielding Laura's mail, and this young woman named Thao Nguyen from Virginia wrote and said, I really love your music, I love your albums. Here's my album, and if you ever play in Virginia, maybe you could let me open for you. But I was really floored by her record, and the next time I was in Washington, D.C., I had lunch with her, and so then I became her manager. And then a little while after that, I stopped managing artists, and by that time, you were familiar with Thao.
And also I had taken over the label.
Yeah, you took
at
over
that
the label.
point. And basically what happened was I was pitching this band. I was pitching Thao and the song to other labels. And much like the Elliott Smith thing, I couldn't get anyone interested. And I also couldn't get that song out of my head. And I finally was like, wait a second. I could put this. It was sort of a similar story, I guess, Slim. I just thought that we were not big enough because I thought she was so amazing. And I thought, oh, that seems like doing her a disservice to just put it out on my label. But then I came around to the idea that actually it was better to get this music out there and have people be able to love her and become fans. So I'm glad I did. But that song, I mean, it's funny that I said the thing about Sgt. Pepper because now I'm listening to every song and I was like, oh, so Sgt. Pepper. Like, it's very, it's just like so orchestral and there's so much upbeat joy and her lyrics are so fantastic. I really feel like she's one of those classic songwriters who writes about very, very sad subjects in such an upbeat way that you'd never know unless you were really paying attention, what she was really talking about.
Right. The dissonance between the upbeat music and the really depressing lyrics is pretty genius, I think.
I love that pretty much always. Does anybody else have anything to say about that song?
What can you say? It's an incredible song that really stands on its own. I love that it has kind of elements of hip hop and folk, and it plays these different elements off of each other in a way that as you said, is uplifting and fun and interesting, and it just stands out from the pack as a brilliant piece of work. And Thao, just what a voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very special voice too.
When I don't know if she still does this, but when she used to play it with the band, she would start out beatboxing before she would start singing.
Yeah,
which was really neat.
Okay, guys, so I have one more question. I think there's been a lot in this roundtable for musicians to learn. A lot of the stuff we've said has been pretty helpful if people actually listen to it. But let's go around and just let me know if there's anything that you would advise a musician who's sending their demo to a gatekeeper. Theo?
Do your research.
Excellent. Slim?
If you invite a label owner or an A&R guy to your show and the person comes in and watches half the set, stays at the back of the room, watches half the set and leaves, don't then conclude that the person is a jerk and that they didn't pay attention and like write a bunch of stuff on Facebook about how they suck. Because actually the life of an A&R person, maybe they had to see 4 shows that night, maybe their knees are tired, they may still have actually really loved your set. So wait and see instead of just jumping to a conclusion about that.
And Ken?
Well, I mean, I would definitely repeat the do your research part, like do your homework about where you're sending things. And, you know, I'd also like add to that, you know, definitely be proactive about sending out your band's music. But, you know, also, you know, bear in mind that for a lot of record labels, that's not really how they find bands. You know, personally, you know, 9 out of 10 bands we, you know, sign up to Dirtnap are bands that I actually reach out to them rather than the other way around. So even though we occasionally, like very occasionally do start to work with a band just out of a random thing that they sent us, that's pretty much the exception more than it is the rule.
That's all good advice. Thanks, guys. Well, we're out of time, you guys. Thank you so much for our very first Gatekeepers Roundtable. We had Ken Cheppaikode from Dirtnap Records. We had Slim Moon, formerly of Kill Rock Stars. And we had Theo Craig, the freelance club promoter. Thanks, guys, so much for joining me.
Thanks, Portia.
Thank you.
And that's our show. The songs we played today were used by permission from the artists. If you have a question you want answered on the show, please email us at thefutureofwhatshow@gmail.com. Our episodes are archived at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat, and you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Our program was engineered by Reed Harvey and is produced by John Sepulvedo and Will Watts. Thanks to Digital One Studios in Portland. I'm Portia Sabin, president of Kill Rock Stars. See you next week.